Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another narrator interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is a narrator making their official debut here on the show. Now, my guest today has been in love with stories for as long as she can remember. As a child, she was the kind of reader who could disappear so completely into a book that the world around her seemed to melt away. So much so that one summer day, after reading about a blizzard in a Laura Ingalls Wilder novel, I probably butchered that name, I
That's all
apologize.
right.
she actually bundled it. She actually bundled up in a snowsuit before realizing it was July. That lifelong passion, viewers and listeners, for storytelling has now grown to a career in audiobook narration. With a natural love for literature and a gift for bringing words to life, she blends her warmth, authenticity, and enthusiasm to give every story its own unique voice. When she isn't behind the microphone or buried in a novel, she can be found exploring the beautiful Colorado outdoors with her dog or working as a veterinary technician. And through her narration, her goal is simple: to inspire, entertain, and immerse listeners in the magic of storytelling. So without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, Jess Rosenfield. Jess, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Awesome. Jess, I'm so excited to have you here on the show and to learn all about your introduction into the world of narration, the project you've been a part of, and some of your favorite moments from the projects you've worked on, either that scenes or characters, and how you approach the industry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, before we dive into your background, is there anything you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners? Possibly something that people may not know about you.
Um, Geez. No, not really. I think I'm fairly transparent on my um, social social media pages. Although I will say, and I'm going to get this out of the way now, I am a stutterer, which also makes it even more ironic that I narrate books. So when I'm nervous, I stutter worse. But hopefully, by putting that out there, that will no longer happen.
Okay, all right. And for viewers and listeners, meeting you now for the very first time, what are some projects, some books that you've been a part of, either narrating the entire book or being one of the main characters in the books?
I have narrated a few books. Most of who I've worked with have been new authors themselves. So I have my very first one was called, I believe, Outside the Box Traveling Families. And it was 9 different families that have all decided to travel outside of the US, take their families outside of the US, and how that worked for them, how they
Hmm.
still homeschooled, how they chose to live their lives. Um, I just recently got done with The Glenlings, which was also a new author, Diane Prue. A little fantasy adventure kind of focusing on preserving Earth.
Nice. Very, very nice. So, before we dive deep into your background as a narrator, let's talk a little bit about the lead up to that. So, from your bio, you've always been someone very passionate about reading and getting immersed
Mhm.
in storytelling. And also, your main background is a veterinary technician. So, I am very curious, what would you consider to be your definitive aha moment that really pushed you on the path to becoming a narrator?
Sure. I was reading out loud in a group, and someone in the group just turned to me and was like, I love it when you read out loud. You should think about narrating books. And my first thought was, no, I'm a stutterer. That ain't going to happen. Um, and I feel like most people, not too crazy about the sound of my own voice. So I figured no one else is going to want to hear it either. But it just kind of rattled around in my brain for a little while. And then I was like, well, why not see? So I started Googling, YouTubing, looking into it. Was surprised to see that really it's not that hard to set up a sound booth in your home. The equipment, you can get started for not too much, and still get some pretty good qualities. So I decided to dip my toe in it, and here I am.
Nice. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So now let's dive into your life, the behind the scenes of a narrator. So when you got started in the industry, Jess, one of the surprising things that really shocked you about the industry. As you mentioned before, just now, you learned how easy it was to set up a recording booth in your home. But I'm wondering, beyond that, what really took you by surprise about being a narrator?
Um, Honestly, all the work that goes into it. The one thing that probably stuck in my mind the most was someone mentioning that it takes a good professional narrator 6 hours to produce 1 hour of book. So there's a lot of work put into it. It's not easy money. You do have to put some time into it, but it's totally worth it.
Nice. Very, very nice. So from that point, going ahead, what was
Mhm.
sort of like your ritual or routine that gets you in the zone when you're going to record in your studio?
Okay. Usually I am reviewing, going back over the scripts, whether it's for an audition or it's a project that I already have that I'm working on. I am reviewing that script, rereading it, re-immersing myself back into the story, what's taking place at that moment. Um, as far as like warming up, I'll probably be doing some chores around the house, singing to some songs. That's usually how I tend to warm up my voice. Um, and then I come into the booth, hit record, and just jump right in.
Nice. Very, very nice. And as a fan question, one of many questions that I'll be asking you in the interview, Jess, one of my viewers asked, how do you approach characters in the books that you've been a part of so that way they feel authentic and yet compelling?
Cool, that's a question. I am a very empathetic person. So it's not hard for me to put myself in someone else's shoes
Mm,
to immediately feel what they're feeling, to somehow relate to what they're going through. And so a lot of times that happens without me even trying to. And then I actually have to like try to take a step back or something because while your authors and your readers want to hear emotions and stuff, they don't want to try to understand your words through your crying. So, yeah.
that is very true. That is very, very true. And then, very, very curious, after you found your stride and the stories that you've been a part of, what ultimately, and almost like to reiterate in your bio, what ultimately is your goal whenever you're working with a new author when it comes to narrating their books, and ultimately the promise not just to them or to yourself, but also to their readers who will be listening and reading along?
Sure. So every time I read a book, growing up, even now, still, when I read, I am in the midst of that story. It's not just words on a page. What the words I am reading are actually taking place around me. I am immersed in that story. I am now in that world. And so when I narrate, I want to bring that author's vision to life. I want them to be able to experience their world through someone else's voice, but their words and the way that like I want them to be able to feel. That's hard to say. Um, like I want them to see their vision in their head come to life through my voice, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Um,
very true.
okay, and I want to do that for those readers too. I want them to be able to be immersed in that story and be able to see it taking place around them, hear it taking place around them.
Absolutely, very, very true. And another fan question one of my viewers asked, and I think you may have already answered this in your bio, but one of my viewers asked, I've seen a lot of interviews where narrators have said that if they want to narrate in a certain genre, they should be well acclimated with those types of books. Whether it's a romance fantasy, you should read romance fantasy, or if you want to be a thriller narrator, you have to know the thriller genre. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and if there's some truth to that.
Um, it it helps if you're comfortable with that genre, if you're familiar with that genre. I have auditioned for a whole wide range of books, trying to figure out where I want to fit in. I've auditioned for biographies. I've auditioned for how-tos. I've auditioned for fantasy, sci-fi, things like that. And I will say the stories that I love to read myself are easier for me to audition for than maybe an autobiography or an how-to book. That those aren't things I normally read myself. And so it does take a lot of work on my end to make that sound better.
Yes, very, very true. And I've heard a lot of things from other narrators I've had on the show who said very much the same thing, that it does help to at least read a few books to know what to expect in terms of, what the pacing is like, the certain word types. And if you already are a fan of that genre, then you're already going to have that passion already within you. And this actually is a new fan question, which I haven't gotten before, but I'm really excited to ask you this, Jess. Do you have an embarrassing moment in a recording booth, whether that's may have said a line incorrectly, or maybe a blooper, anything like that?
Since I'm the only one in the recording booth, I can't really say I'm embarrassed by anything. There's probably plenty of words that come out wrong that if someone else was in here with me, they probably would be a little embarrassing. It can be frustrating when, for whatever reason, my mouth decides it does not want to say the word that I know is said a different way. And I have had that many times. I think once I was trying to say soldiers were shooting, but I was trying to do it in a male voice, and it kept coming out shoulders were shooting. I took forever to get to soldiers were shooting. And I can't think of one I had most recently, but it can be the most simple of words. And for whatever reason, at that moment, it comes out the wrong way. And I'll end up saying it 2 or 3 times before I finally convince my mouth to say it the right way.
Yeah, that's true. And also same thing for authors as well. Sometimes when we're thinking in our head, we type it down on page. It's like, no, that's not exactly correct. Or if it is correct, but the autocorrect says, no, that's wrong, says, no, that's correct. That is correct. I know it doesn't sound like a word, but it is a word. It is frustrating. But that's kind of like the fun of being a creative in this industry. There are going to be those moments. And moving forward, one thing I did want to ask you, Jess, is as a creator, it can be a very lonely venture, at least in the beginning. And what I mean by that is, just like with authors, narrators, editors, and artists, there's that apprehensiveness to tell our inner circle what we're working on, whether it's a new project or a new venture in our lives. Some people have told them from the beginning. Some people have told them towards the end, once they knew for themselves that this was guarantee, a certainty. So for you, Jess, when did you tell your friends and family that you were embarking on this new journey?
I pretty much told them as soon as I had, decided to buy the mic, buy the software, do things like that. It is a little bit harder to tell like more extended people. Like I just started a new job. And so when they're like when they're asking me, what am I planning on doing on my day off? And do I have hobbies or things like that? Like, I'm still a little cautious to go, yeah. And I narrate books because, they're excited and they think it's great and they want to hear all the books I've narrated. And there's still a part of me that is just like, I'm not sure this is real yet. So, yeah.
That's true. That is very, very true. And it leads into what we will be discussing on, which is, imposter syndrome, what it means to be a creative in the digital age. Before we get to that, there were a few other questions I wanted to ask you. And one of which is what I like to call the dreaded narrator's block. almost like the writer's block for us authors, as I've talked to a lot of other narrators on the show who have also said the same thing. In recording booth, there are going to be days where we either can't get the voice right for a certain character, or we can't get an accent right for reading the story, or we're just not in the right headspace. So for you,
Mhm.
Jess, how do you approach the dreaded narrator's block?
That is definitely a very real thing. I've definitely had that where I'll be in the other room. I will have looked at the auditions and I'll pick out the ones I want to do. And I come in and I set up and I start recording. And for whatever reason, it just is not coming. It just is not sounding the way it sounded in my head. And those days, I will still push through. I'll still make myself do the auditions. I'll still sit there and edit them. They don't necessarily get sent in. But to me, again, something I had heard from someone else is every audition is a practice. And
Yes.
so to me, it's important to still do that, still push myself through it, have those bad days. And sometimes I'm surprised when I sit down and I listen back to it and I'm like, oh, that actually didn't sound so bad. Maybe I'll go ahead and send it in. Other days, if I have a project I'm working on, my editing always kind of stacks up on me because that's not really the fun part. So I'd rather be in here recording. So I usually always have something that I can be working on. So on those days where my voice just isn't there, for whatever reason, I'm just not feeling it, then I'll work on another project. I'll work on editing it, the things that don't require me to actually be in here recording.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very true. I know exactly the same thing, especially when it comes to editing. It's like I would rather be writing, but editing is just as important. It can be
Yes.
dreadful at some times, but it is necessary. And here's a two-part fun little fan question one of my viewers wanted to ask. It's actually come one of my favorite fan questions to ask my guests, and that is, what has been your favorite moment or scene to narrate in the books you've worked on, as well as the most challenging scene or moment to narrate?
Hmm. Um, right now, probably my most favorite scenes are the project I'm working on right now. And it is just, this author has done such an amazing job with her characters. I fell in love with them in the first audition I did for her, and just the way she writes them and the way that the two characters work with each other, the way they interact. I just recording them, reading it, and then getting to record it. It just gives me goosebumps. Like, it's just, I'm so in love with these two characters, and they're just so much fun to do.
Awesome. Now, what was probably the most challenging scene or moment to narrate?
Um, I did a book um, that, trying to think of how to describe it. I think it's kind of like an autobiographical novel that had to do with the effects of COVID and the lockdown and how it affected
Mm,
this one person. And just a lot of her story kind of hit close to home sometimes. And
mm.
so I'd catch myself struggling during that one. I'd have to take a break, get my feelings packed down in, and then try to go again. But probably the stories that can just hit a little too close are hard to do.
Very true. Very, very true. And that's something that we're going to be touching on when we get to the business side. But before we get to that, now we're going to ask you some reflective questions, pardon me, that I'm really eager to hear your thoughts on. So the first one goes back to what I mentioned earlier, and that is, what does it mean to be a creative in the digital age? Because being a creator, whether you're a narrator, author, editor, artist, what have you, it is a blessing and a curse. As one person on my show had previously said, it's never been more easier to put your work out there, but it's never been more difficult to get notice and exposure. But even
Mhm.
with that said, we do risk ourselves getting the negative side effects of exposure, spam, trolls, negativity, and social media can be draining. It can be exhausting, and it can also heighten our insecurities and our anxiety. So with all that said, Jess, what does discipline you to still be the best narrator you can be?
Um, that's all very true. There is a lot of exposure, but at the same time, it's hard to be heard because these authors are just getting flooded with so
Mhm.
many auditions, and you're trying to find a way to get yourself heard, but still be authentic and everything. And I think I had to deal with the no's a lot in the beginning and not taking those personally, like not hearing back from the authors, getting those notices that thanks for your audition, we chose somebody else.
Mm.
And that can be hard. And I just had to tell myself that, like, I get it. Authors have their own voices in their head when they're writing their books, and my voice just wasn't for them. It doesn't mean that I'm bad. It just meant my voice wasn't what they were looking for. Um, and I really enjoy doing it. So I just keep coming back and trying again.
That's very good. That's really good to hear, Jess. And almost very similar to what a lot of other guests have said on the show that, social media is draining. And also, especially for narrators in particular, especially those, starting off in their careers, it can be taxing, it can be daunting because you do these auditions. And as you mentioned before, there are some days where you will get a call back, or sometimes you may not. And that can be
Mm.
interpreted in so many different ways. And now this next question actually goes back to what you were bringing up before. The scene that was most challenging was the autobiographical book about COVID and what that meant. This
Mm.
question kind of ties into that. And just for context for this question, I've been doing this show now for about 6, 7 years on Spotify and on YouTube. And I've had the opportunity to meet an incredible group of authors, editors, narrators, and more. And from these individuals that I've had the chance to meet, a lot of them began their careers within the last 5 years during the COVID lockdown. And this has sparked a debate of whether or not the COVID years could be seen as a rebirth age or the start of a golden era for the creatives in the industry. And when the floodgates open, you could argue that yes, it did allow new people to enter the industry. As I said before, it's never been more easier to put our work out there, whether you're an indie author self-publishing on Barnes & Noble or Amazon, or a narrator showcasing your talents on Instagram, TikTok, or any other social media platform. But even with that said, this has sparked another debate of, with that mentality, are we in a golden age or are we in an iron or new age? And that leads into, looking at each individual under a microscope and seeing, are they in this because they're passionate about it or are they in this because they want to get a quick buck? And the truth of the
Right.
matter is, which I'm sure you'll definitely agree, Jess, this is not an industry to get rich quick. Whether you're an author, editor, narrator, it is not that. It is a grind
Right.
and a hustle. And that
Mm.
needs to be stated first and foremost. So I digress. In your opinion, Jess, from your own experiences, would you say that we are in a golden age in a way, a renaissance, or do you think we're more closer to a new age/iron age?
That is hard to answer because, like you said, like COVID definitely did um, open up this whole new door, working from home and all the different ways that people can do this. And you have such a huge percentage of people that have still chosen to follow that for whatever reason. It's easier. It gives them a chance to do what they really, really are passionate about doing. All those various reasons as to why you do it. Um, and I think, uh, you know, um, really, it's just going to take time to tell, especially with the advancements of AI. I think in some ways that's going to kind of make it where we are sort of in a golden age, but while it was becoming, maybe not becoming a norm, but becoming more normal, we're now going to go back into a new age again with all these, with having to decide how AI is going to be used and how to work with it or not work with it.
Yes, I'm actually glad you brought up AI because that leads into the next question and how that affects narrators, especially narrators, because it is companies which shall not be named, but if you've been following my show, you know the ones I'm referring to that have used AI softwares to copy human voices, to replicate it, and then use those said voices to narrate authors' books. But the voices that are being used are not real people, they're a program. And the actual individuals, they get nothing. And a lot of narrators, as well as authors, have all shared the same thing that you could use AI as a tool. But in terms of creating something, it is a huge no-no and a disservice because AI creates a false sense of creativity because it mass produces it. And just, I would like to hear more thoughts on this. If you can give more detail, how, in your opinion, AI is affecting narrators.
Sure. I think it, right now it definitely is a struggle because you have publishing companies, even authors maybe, that see a quick and easy way to get their book out there and a little bit cheaper because it's all automatic, but it doesn't sound the same. Like, I've listened to books that have been AI. I've gone ahead and had a book that I was reading and I was like, no, I need to hear it for a change, and have used whatever tool that particular platform had that so that I could hear it. And it's not the same as a human. And even if you're trying to make it sound emotional and stuff, it's still just not there. So, I mean, definitely those of us that are creating are kind of fighting against it because in a way it is making it harder to get jobs because you've got people out there that want to save a penny, which is totally understandable in today's age. All of us are there. We all want to save a penny.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there comes a point where you do get what you pay for. And it's just the quality's not there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very, very true. And this now goes into the business side of being a narrator with some icebreaker questions, which are kind of fan questions. So my viewer asks, number one, in addition to going back to the beginning, what surprised you about the narration industry for you when you began, working with other authors? Is there any more details you can add to that about doing more auditions? How's that worked in terms of, showcasing your talents on social media? And secondly, up to your point right now in your career as a narrator, is there anything you would have done differently?
Ooh, anything I would have done differently. I don't think so because I've learned from everything I've done. While I can go back and listen to some of the things I recorded way back in the beginning and kind of cringe and like go, oh, I can't believe I sounded that way. It was still just a process of learning. Like, that's how we all learn. We try something, we don't like it, we try again, we change it here, change it there, and find out how it works for us. So no, I don't think I would have changed anything. To make that first book go faster, I probably would have invested in a better laptop from the get-go. I started all this with a Chromebook because something I read was like, yeah, you can do this with a Chromebook. No, you can't. That was not easy. That took forever. That's probably the only thing I would have changed is, in addition to the mic and my mixer and things like that, I would have invested in a better computer. It would have cut my production time down by a lot.
Nice. All right. Fascinating. Fascinating. And kind of with that in mind, almost like with authors, how we try to showcase our voice and our talents and our vision. It's the same thing for narrators. You guys want to showcase your range, your talent, but you don't want to be so new that it may scare off potential clients, but you don't want to
Right.
sound too familiar to another narrator or maybe an actor in your performance. It's that middle ground. So for you, Jess, how have you been able to showcase your individuality through your narration?
Um, I think I'm still working on that. I've never been good at self promoting myself. Um, that's just not me. In my real life, I'm very happy in the background, part of the crowd. No one knows I'm there. So having to promote myself, having to kind of what I feel push myself on others has been hard, has taken a lot of work. I'm still working on the social media aspect of it. That's exhausting, coming up with frequent posts to put out there, trying to
Mhm.
find the right crowd. Um, and as far as making myself stand out from others, like I said, I think I'm still not quite sure how to do that yet. At the end of the day, I'm just being myself and seeing if someone out there seems to like what they hear.
Yes, very, very true. Absolutely, Jess. Now, this is another fan question, but I'm going to tweak it just a little bit. Now, normally this question, when I ask authors, is when do you know when the book is finished and deciding where to end? So I'm going to change that for narrators. Now, as I talked with many narrators on the show, they talked about the numerous performances they've done for even just one scene or getting towards the
Mm-hmm.
very end. So for you, Jess, as a narrator and as a voice artist and as a performer, when do you know personally, after reading the line over and over, that the performance is done? That this is the last time reading it, not because you may be burned out, but because this has probably been like the most intense moment that you've done for this book up to this point, and you don't want to do another take because there may not be another take for this ending.
Right, right. That's a very good question. And I've definitely been experiencing that with this current project that I'm working on. There have been a lot of re-records and trying things different ways. And for the most part, for me, it's when I listen to it back and it just hits. You know how you're reading a really good story and you just get that line that just hits. Might give you goosebumps, or it's just like, oh wow, just sounds good. That's usually when I know that we're done. Like, take it, and we're gonna go with that. Um, there's also sometimes that for whatever reason, I am a crazy perfectionist, and there are days that no matter how many times I edit something, no matter how many times I play it back, no matter how many times I record it, my ears just aren't happy with it. And that's when I just take a chance and I send it to the author anyways and say, what do you think of this? And sometimes they're like, no, that sounds great. We're not doing anything else with it. And other days they're like, yeah, that didn't sound right. I need you to redo that. And then I take a few days, I think on it, and then I try again.
Yes, absolutely. And on this topic of author and narrator relationship, there's another question that I do want to ask, and I think it's the most important one, and that is etiquette when it comes for authors working with narrators and vice versa. Because I definitely think for anyone who wants to work with either, I think go for it. It's an incredible collaboration opportunity. I've been very fortunate to work with some great narrators who are incredible friends, but I know that I need to have proper etiquette with them. Even though they are my friends, this is still a business collaboration. So, in
Right.
your opinion, Jess, are there any things you would like to share with the viewers and listeners, especially for first time authors, in regards to what you consider to be proper etiquette when it comes to first time authors working with narrators for the first time?
As far as etiquette goes, I think I'm probably a little laid back. as long as there's just open channels to talk things through. Like I don't want my author to feel bad that they don't like something that I sent them. By all means, let me know you want me to redo it. That is fine. And let me know as soon as you know. Don't wait till the end of the book and then tell me you want something redone in chapter 1. Like that's a lot more work. I really think communicating is the best. And as far as how you guys choose to communicate, I think that's up to everyone. I've got one author that right now we message each other back and forth on Instagram because that's what works best for her. So I'm cool with that. That works for me. Yeah.
Yes. That's actually really good. That's really, really good. And when it comes to first new narrators entering the industry, what would be your advice to them? Things almost going back to before, things that you wish you would have learned in the beginning that you now would like to share onto the next generation. And secondly, when working with authors and possibly a message to new authors watching or listening to this interview, what do you want them to take away from your performance?
For new narrators, definitely persevere, keep pushing through. Like we had touched on before, imposter syndrome is so real. And just push through it. Don't take those no's personally. Again, your voice is not for everyone, and that's okay. Just like when we read a book, we hear those voices a certain way in our head. And I'm sure we've all watched those movies that are based on books that we've loved. And we're like, oh my gosh, why did you choose that person to play that character? So don't take the no's personally. Don't sell yourself short. Like, know what you are capable of doing. When you set your contract with your authors, give yourself a little extra time. Don't box yourself down to a very narrow time frame. Things are going to happen. You're going to have a sore throat one day. You're not going to be able to record. Your equipment's going to malfunction. Give yourself a little extra time when telling your authors how long it's going to take you to do your book. But really just keep pushing through. If this is something you really want to do it, and the right people will come through.
Yes, absolutely. We have a few minutes left, so I'm going to combine some very old questions for this interview because I think they are really, really fun. Now, this one, I'm actually going to do a little scenario. So let's say, Jess, you've been invited to host a seminar about narration for those who want to get into the industry and those who want to work with narrators for the very first time. In that seminar, what is the one topic you would like to share and teach that group?
Oh, wow. That's a question. One topic. I kind of feel like I keep harping on the not taking no's personally, but maybe because I'm a little bit of a sensitive soul and I have to constantly preach at myself not to take the no's personally. Yeah, I think that might have to be it.
Nice. All right. And here is another fan question for one of my viewers who asks, which is more difficult in terms of performance? Making a scene immersive or making a scene that balances the emotional weight with the conflict of the story?
Cool. Might be balancing the emotional weight, making sure the emotions are there, but not necessarily overpowering or not even maybe representing them appropriately at all. Like just kind of glossing over them because you don't want to bury the main point or you don't want to over bear on something else, but just finding that balance where the emotions are there, but not too strong or too little.
Very, very true. Very, very true. Now, you also mentioned this early, not too long ago, in the this portion of the interview, and that's of course, the right people come along. Are there any people that you'd like to give a shout out who have helped you on your journey as a narrator?
Um, there have been so many that I have read or watched their YouTubes. Travis Baltrey, I followed a lot of his stuff in the beginning. And I think most recently it's been Amber. I know she was on your show not too long ago. She was one of the first people that like actually interacted with my posts when I started following her. And that kind of gave me some validation that, hey, like this girl's got it. She's got it made. She's doing great. And she's actually paying attention to me, who's like brand new in this and not really worth anything right now. So yeah.
Yes, very, very true. Love Amber. In fact, you're the second narrator to have name dropped her in an interview. She is funny. She is witty.
Mhm.
Absolutely love working with her. I 100% agree. And on that topic, as we talked about, that validation, what has sort of been the reviews been like in terms of like, the books you've narrated and overall your performance? Have they been positive, very critical, or somewhere down the middle? And with that being said, do you feel that, how do I word this in a way, that as creatives, seeking validation should not be the sole drive and push for those entering this industry? Because as mentioned before, there is no guarantee.
Right. So far, my reviews, there's not been a ton of them, but so far, the reviews that are out there are good. I've not had any negative reviews on my performances. And definitely, we should not be trying to find our worth in those reviews. Because again, your voice isn't for everyone. There's always going to be somebody out there that's not happy with something. That's just how our world works for some reason. So at the end of the day, as long as you are happy with the work that you did, you can take pride in the work that you did. That's really all that matters.
Absolutely could not agree more. Now, here are the last three questions, and two of these are fan questions. The first fan question is, out of all the books you've worked on, who or what has been your favorite book to narrate, and within that book, your favorite character to voice? And secondly, what is a genre that you would love to narrate within?
Okay. So, sorry to all the other projects that I've done up to this point, but I am going to have to choose my current book as my favorite. Giving up oh my goodness, I can never see the title when I need to. Giving Up Elysium by W.B. Clark is a dark Greek mythology.
Ooh.
And I would say probably her main female character, Ymir, is my favorite. Like, I am just loving this book. It is very hard for me not to read ahead. Although, because of the way I'm recording this book, I'm kind of recording certain characters together. So there's times I am kind of skipping ahead. So I kind of know what's happening. And I've had, a couple tear moments of going, oh no, that's what's coming. But like, at the end of the day, this is just, it's a great book. She's a fantastic writer, and I'm really enjoying it.
Nice. And what is a genre that you would love to dive into to narrate?
I'm really enjoying the Greek mythology. I love sci-fi, fantasy stories. That's always my go-to to read. So those are usually the ones I try to focus most of my time on.
Nice. Very, very nice. And as the final question to this amazing narrator interview, Jess, here it is. Looking back on your career thus far, and this is another fan question, and a very, very great one, I must say. How has being a narrator and going into this industry changed or impacted your personal and professional life?
Wow. Right now it's really not had too much effect on my professional life. As a vet tech, those two don't really cross over too much. But I guess you could say, like, my personal life, when you find a hobby or a job, I kind of view this as I'm lucky to get paid to do something that I just really like to do. So in my mind, it's still more of a hobby than actually a job, because I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun with it. When you have something that you can focus on, something that brings you joy and stuff, it really just makes your life feel more full.
Beautifully said, Jess. And with that, viewers and listeners, we conclude this amazing narrator interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I want to give a huge thank you to Jess for making her official debut here on the show. Now, Jess, where can people find you on social media if they want to connect? And do you have any upcoming projects you would like to announce? Or, let me rephrase, what are some upcoming books that you've narrated that will be coming out later this year and possibly next year?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram, Voice by Jess. I am also, you can also reach me by email, voicebyjess80@gmail.com. That's really my social presence. And then right now I'm really just working on that one project, Giving Up Elysium. And that is slated to be released end of December, I believe.
Nice. And I will link all that down below in the description of this video. And viewers and listeners, if you would like to see Jess make a second appearance back on the show, possibly with the author she is working with on her book that she mentioned before, comment down below and I will try to make that happen. And as always, viewers and listeners, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with all new episodes and all new features coming out soon on my website, my blog, and my books coming out soon. And once more, a huge thank you to Jess for coming out on the show. Wishing her the very best. And until next time, viewers and listeners, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill, signing out, wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you all in the next episode.